G'day champions, I hope you're all fantastic. We're taking a look at some stuff on the Fractal FM9 today. I was asked a whole swathe of questions regarding different things on the FM9, from the initial setup to hearing some of the high gain amps to different effect types, and questions about layouts and overall functionality with FM9 edits. So we'll start with some initial setup stuff. Feel free to skip that whole section if you've got an FM3 or an AXFX3 and you know how to set the input and output levels there. But if you're new to the Fractal world, there is probably some important information in there. Then I am going to start with my main live preset, give you a few variations on that, and then play around with a few overlooked or unsung blocks. I did want to get to things like the block and channel library, quick build, and a deep dive into the foot switching functionality, but I think we'll have to do that on another video. If you have any requests for any of that stuff, as always, let me know in the comments. In the meantime, there are timestamps so you can navigate around, have some fun, and enjoy. Okay, let's do some out-of-the-box basic setup. I'm plugging my guitar into input 1 of the FM9, and I'm actually using the SPDIF, the digital output, into my audio interface. What you're going to hear from my guitar when I'm playing it is the raw output of the FM9 recorded straight into Pro Tools, but I am listening back on a set of full-range studio monitors. So let's do this. Let's hit Setup, and we'll go to I/O on here. The first thing we want to set is this AD input level for input 1. This is going to basically set up the converters on input 1 for the best signal to noise ratio. It is not going to increase the relative gain of presets. We can use input 1 gain for that. We'll talk about that in a second. But basically with this, we just have to look at the input 1 LEDs and tickle the red. So you can basically get the guitar that you're going to use the most, or the guitar you have with the highest output pickups, crank everything up and just chug away on this until you're just lighting up the red a little bit. And it's going to be different for different players and different guitars and different setups. So do this. You don't have to set it to the value I set it to. I'm just going to show you how I would optimize it. So I'm just going to chug away on the bridge pickup of this guitar with everything wide open and turn this up or down. Let's see. So you can see I'm just tickling the red when I'm playing really, really heavily there. That's with the input level at about 20%. Now, let's say I grabbed a Strat with really low gain pickups on it, or pickups that don't have a whole lot of output, and I wanted more gain out of that guitar. I could actually just use the input gain control. That is going to turn up the input level across all presets. Very, very handy control if you're swapping guitars at gigs or for a session. But for me, I just leave it as it is. I like my different guitars to have different output levels. The next thing we want to do is I want to calibrate this expression pedal that I've got plugged in to pedal jack number 1. So let's page all the way across. You can see I've set the pedal type to expression. Can navigate down here, press enter, and just kind of do this. Take it through the range of motion and hit enter again, and then your expression pedal is going to be calibrated. We will talk about the expression setup a little bit more in a second, but let's go over here to audio now, and you can set the input and output configuration and levels here. So I'm using the digital out here, so I've got the word clock set to internal and the output source for SPDIF as output number 1. Furthermore, down here you can see I've got output 1 set as stereo. The output level is plus 4 dB. If you can't run at line level, you can turn that down to -10. You can set the phase on all the outputs as well, and you can even set output 2 to copy output 1, or output 3 to copy input 1. Very handy if you're using multiple playback systems, or you want to cut a DI without having to reroute anything if you're in the studio. So that's it on the I/O menu for me. Let's go to the MIDI remote menu, and I like to have scene revert on for this, which means if I'm on a particular scene and say I navigate to the effects layout here and turn the delay on, let's go back to scenes, I've now got delay on my main rhythm preset. Let's say I move to another scene and then I move back to my main rhythm scene. It's going to remember this scene as it was saved with the delay off. which personally I like. You may prefer it that when you say add a delay to this scene, navigate to another scene and come back, it is the way you left it. That's totally up to you. Now, really important one that I find here is this external setup. I like to set external controller number 1 to be the same source as the pedal jack there. This is how all the factory presets are set up. And furthermore, if I want to use an FC controller with this and plug an expression pedal into, say, pedal jack number 1 on the FC pedal, I don't have to change anything in my presets. That's a really, really handy little one there. You can also set up all your different MIDI CCs to control various functions on here. I have a whole video about automating the Axe-Fx 3 with Pro Tools, which you can watch if you want to do it with the FM9 as well, because you got MIDI over USB with the FM9. Okay, last little bit, let's go to global settings. You can set up the output EQs here. The global EQs is either graphic EQs, parametric EQs, or I just leave them off because I personally don't use them. If you're using multiple presets and you want to tweak them all really quickly for a particular playback system, very, very handy. This is really important right here. I'm playing through full range speakers, so I want power amp modeling and cabinet modeling on. If you're playing through a tube power amp and a guitar cabinet, you might want both of those off. If you're playing through a solid state power amp and a guitar cabinet, you probably want to start with power amp modeling on and with cabinet modeling disabled. Furthermore, you can select between the tone controls to either display the authentic controls, you know, on like a Fender style amp, there might only be gain, bass, and treble, or the ideal controls where you kind of get controls for everything, whether they are there on the real amp or not. The last little bit is all the way down here. Set the AC line frequency to whatever the line frequency is in your country. So the wall outlet that you're plugging your FM9 into, in Australia, it's 50 Hertz. So I've set it to 50 Hertz. A bunch of other places in the world, it's probably 60 Hertz. So you can set those, and that is just gonna mean that you get kind of less weird noise happening, which is always a good thing. It will help all the input gates and things like that operate optimally. I said last one, but really the actual last one is then to go into the FC controllers menu here. And what I've done is I've loaded these OFMG9 default layouts rather than the factory default layouts in there, which basically I just find a little bit more intuitive. Like if I'm on the scenes layout, I have 4 scenes here. I can press this button and get the next 4 scenes. I can easily navigate to the effects layout where I've got a bunch of effects here and get more effects on there. And as always, with all of these layouts, you can set these buttons to pretty much do whatever you want across the 8 different layouts on there. So that's pretty wicked. I'm just going to do a non-awkward segue and play a bunch of lead guitar, and we'll just take a look at a few little presets which might give you some ideas for creating your own patches on the FM9. Okay, the first preset example is actually a factory preset, Leon's Live FM9, and I'll show you just a few little things you can do, or that I would do, to really bring this into line with what I like and what I use live. So we're using the USA Lead mid-gain amp model. There is a gate after the amp. There is a cabinet block here using 2 factory IRs. There's a parametric EQ doing some sculpting of the overall tone. There's a multiband compressor acting as a dynamic EQ, and there's a reverb acting as a room simulation on here. The first thing that I would do is I would actually use one of my own cabinet IRs in here. I think these factory IRs by York Audio sound amazing. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. I just have a particular cab IR that I use on just about everything that I'm used to, that I've got really dialed in for live gigs. So let's just mute this particular cab. There's several different ways you can import your own cabinet IRs. Probably the easiest is to go Tools, Manage Cabs. Then you can right click one of these empty slots and import it. Hit that, navigate to the file that you want, but you can see I've already imported a bunch of my own IRs. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go User, slot number 4. That's where I have my cab. I'm going to set the IR length to Ultra Res, which is just a slightly longer impulse response length. And now I'm pretty much where I like to be when I'm playing live. And And this particular preset is very much dialed in around this guitar, which at the moment is in drop C. It's a little bit of a darker sounding guitar. You can just simply go in here and tweak the authentic controls to really fine tune this to your particular guitar and your particular playing style. Another little tweak I would make in here is I'll go to the reverb, and there's hardly any CPU increase if you want to use ultra high quality reverb on here. I'm basically just using this as like a room simulation. So you can bring the mix up to really hear that. Let's check it out. Now, you could go for a slightly longer reverb time if you want that. And another good trick is in the advanced section, you can turn up the early level so you get more of that early reflection room style thing. That's pretty awesome, especially if you're playing with headphones. We use in-ears live, and I kind of like that. For now, I'll just turn that back down to the default level. Another good trick with the reverb is to carve out a little bit of low end from the reverb. I'll turn this up to 200 Hertz. It's just going to kind of clear up the low end a bit. Pretty cool stuff right there. Of course, you could use any reverb type you like in it if you prefer plates or halls or anything like that. I like this Recording Studio C because it's not too much of an effect. It's more about a feel thing and an experience thing, especially, like I said, when you're playing with headphones or in ears. Scene 2 is really where the fun is at in this one. And take a look at this. Under the Ideal tab of the amp block, you can set up an input boost, so you don't need a separate drive pedal or boost pedal or anything like that. And you can turn on the fat switch, which on a real boogie is the pull fat control, I think. I've assigned these to control switches. And what you can do with these control switches is under the Controllers tab, you can set their status per scene. So you can see in scene 2, the boost is on, more gain, happy days, and the fat switch, which is going to kind of change the character of the gain right there. Furthermore, we have this amazing multi-tap delay block in here. I'm using the quad parallel delay. The first 2 delay taps are really short delays, and I've added chorus to those. If you've ever used a Lexicon PCM80 or PCM81, that's kind of the vibe there, those chorus multi-tap delays. And then delay 3 and 4 are set up for that classic quarter note, dotted eighth note thing. Panned in stereo, I've gone hard with the high cut control on there. I've added a little bit of diffusion, so the delays are kind of going to get smeared out. Basically, this is going to give me a super wide sort of chorus sound. It's going to give me delay, and those delays are going to become these really lovely, soft, pillowy reverbs on there. And it's what I like when I play lead guitar. It's the ultimate cheat code. Oh, and there's still more gain, remember. That's some good stuff. That's some really, really good stuff right there. And scene 3, instead of using a multi-tap delay, I'm just using a standard delay block for a rhythmic style effect. You can see there, simple quarter note, dotted eighth note delay. There's no cross feedback there. This multi-tap delay though is so versatile. On scene 7 here, I'm using it as a quad chorus, so 4 really short delays. You can see I've set independent rate and depth, but I'm using the quad tap delay there, which rather than have individual feedbacks on each of the delay taps, it sums all the feedback, but I'm not using any feedback there. If I was, I could create, I guess, like a quad flanger or something like that. This just gives you that massive, wide, late 80s thing. Yeah, that's pretty rad right there. And I think I'm also using that particular block here together with the delay to give me like a faux rotary. So again, short delay times, but the chorus rates are really cranked up here. And this gets used for the Ragdoll song, Rewind Your Mind. There's also a wah in the preset. I'm sure you all know what the wah does. And the last scene is designed as like a standalone thing here where I'm using the Band Commander amp model, I'm using the DM2 delay, and I'm using the Opera House reverb on there just for some kind of nice, clean, noodly stuff. The next preset idea makes use of the multiple ins and outs on the FM9, and I've taken that live preset and just kind of slimmed it down a tiny little bit. There's still the same tricks going on with the multiband compressor and the control switches to manage the gain levels, but you'll notice that there is an entirely independent chain down here through input 2 and output 2. The reason being, this is the guitar chain up here, so I've basically got the same sound. But down here, we've got a bass setup. I'm using the SV bass together with a user capture I've got of an Ampeg 8x10 cabinet, which sounds pretty rad. Also a bit of room simulation going on here. I know some people are looking at it going, reverb on bass, are you crazy? But again, it's the in-ears thing. And we're using the Black Glass 7K basically to kind of mimic Ryan, our bass player's SansAmp setup. So I should probably just grab his bass and play this really quickly for you. You'll notice in this preset as well that I'm just using the vintage digital delay instead of that quad tap multi-delay. The reason being is that this preset is designed for mono operation because so many of the PAs we play through, especially in smaller venues, are just mono PAs. So it's a lot easier than having to worry about like changing the output settings, which you can do if you don't want to build separate presets. But just having that vintage digital mono delay on there does the trick for me. If we're doing stuff where we can play in stereo, I will use my full stereo preset, and then Ryan just has a SansAmp which he can use. Or if we're just playing mono, we can use the one device and totally capably gig live with it. It's really, really awesome. You could also do a dual guitar setup like this if you're playing with another guitar player and you don't mind sharing an FM9. It's a great way to cut down on excess gear and keep everything sort of integrated and consistent. And you know, one person could be the switching person and the other person can just play guitar. It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. You could even have somebody operate your wah for you, which might seem like a violation for some people, but I've tried it before and it's kind of fun. Try it out. One more riff on that whole preset idea. I've just got an alternative version of my live preset with a ring modulator set for an octave down effect and an envelope filter just for some kind of fun alternative stuff. If I go to scene 6, you can hear that particular combination. So I've got pitch tracking in the ring mod on and the frequency multiplier set to 1/2, and then this squelchy low pass filter on here. That's the vibe there. And the way I've got this set up is I'm using a perform layout. So I've gone through on the FM9 using the FC edit, and I've just set up layout number 8 to have everything I would need for a live gig. So the bottom right foot switch, tap tempo, but when I hold it, it's a tuner. Then I've got my first 5 scenes here on the tap function. Furthermore, I have 2 control switches here, one controlling the fat switch on the amp, one controlling the boost on the amp in case I just want to kick them on independent of scenes. But then I have got hold functions for these 3 scenes here. And basically the tap function on the FM9, so if I come back here, it's just going to give me my straight up rhythm scene. Now, if I hold that button, it's going to take me to scene 6 with this octave thing because I don't really use this octave thing very much. I want it every now and then. Having it on a hold function seems perfectly reasonable. Similarly, the second foot switch, if I tap it, is my lead scene. And again, not very often, but sometimes I want that octave envelope filter thing on there as well. Absolutely gross. And you can see there's also a hold function so that I can get scene 8, which is just my main rhythm scene, with a phaser on it. And again, that's totally customizable with the layouts right there. Okay, for this preset, I just want to show off a couple of blocks which I think might be a little bit unsung or overlooked. I've got the band commander at stock settings with my same greenback cabinet impulse, and I've got a mega tap delay, a 10 tap delay, a plex delay set to the plex reverb, and then because we can run 2 high quality reverbs with very little impact on the CPU, I'm running the large spring into one of the cloud style reverbs, the NmmWCsPrS, or Stratus as we would say in Australia. So let's see the mega tap delay. Basically, you can think of this like a 64 head echo machine, and then you can have control over the pan pattern and the amplitude pattern of what each of those heads are doing. I've basically set this up to do something kind of similar to a nonlinear reverb type from the old Roland DEP5 rack unit. It does this. So it's panning from left to right. Sounds amazing in stereo. The next one I want to do is I want to make sure I click on the right block. This is the 10 tap delay, and in this particular rhythm tap delay, what you can do in here is you can set each of the successive times between repeats. And I did this just to copy like an old SPX90 style reverb. Again, lots of old rack style emulations on this. We get this. But the really cool thing on this is this rhythm tap feature. Let's set quantize to be a 16th note here, and I can just hit learn and I can just tap in any echo pattern I want. So let's do something like, what's this going to sound like? Totally not a standard echo right there. And I mean, you could have something where you set the number of divisions and they increase or they decrease. There's a lot of potential with the 10 tap. The Plex reverb though is just one of my favorite reverbs of all time. It just isn't in the reverb block, so it's easy to overlook. Stock settings pretty much. I'm running all of these in parallel, as you've probably seen, because I'm going to turn them all on in a second, and I want that nice kind of clean parallel line in there. I've just added a bit of low cut and high cut. This is amazing. Next, let's hear reverb on reverb. We'll start with the large spring. Nice drippy spring there, and then we'll run it into this NmmWCsPrS. And then all of that together, I will play you out with this particular example. If you have any further questions, please let me know in the comments section below. If there's any topics you would like to see featured on future FM9 videos, also let me know. There's links to support the channel in the video description. Hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.